We again appreciate you listening to this webinar on Visa's approach to the 8-digit BIN adoption. We will provide an in-depth look at the potential impact areas and what merchants should be doing now to ensure readiness. We hope this session will give you a head start to complete your internal analysis and support your planning to adopt the 8-digit BIN standard. To present today's information, it is my pleasure to introduce Karen Gullett, who leads Visa's Global Numerics Initiative, and Berenice Navarrete, Deb Pelletier, and Aaron Schrack from Visa cross-functional teams, who are also leading this effort. To get started, Karen will give you some brief context on the industry change and why it matters to your business. We will also be sure you are aware of the resources that Visa has available to support your work to support the new industry standard. And then the rest of the panel will join Karen towards the end when we will address your questions. Again, if we don't have time to get all of your questions, please leave your contact information in the chat window and we will respond to you via email. Karen, I'll hand it over to you to get started.
Thanks so much. Hello all. I very much appreciate you taking the time to participate in today's session, and we are all eager to address your questions on this subject. I'll start by saying implementing a global industry standard is not a typical new product launch. For one thing, Visa does not use the issuing BIN in our financial messages. Transactions based on the 8-digit BIN flow through VisaNet just as they do with the 6-digit BIN. However, based on our discussions with merchants and other partners around the world, we understand many of you do use the 6-digit BIN to inform business decisions and processes. If so, by April 2022, you will need to be able to change your approach to make these same decisions. Visa announced our program nearly 5 years ago to give you plenty of time to develop and implement your plan, and we've been working alongside since then. At this webinar, we are addressing the merchant perspective. Our discussions with merchants and the acquiring community have identified several areas of high interest that we will be highlighting today. Going from left to right, top to bottom, first off, we want to be sure all understand what this means for card issuance and when you will start to see 8-digit BINs in the selling environment. Specific to merchants, we'll share learning from some research Visa commissioned about impacts of the standard change to the selling environment, very relevant if you are using the 6-digit BIN for any of your operations or processes. We'll continue to reinforce the need to be sure any data you are using is from your acquirers based on authorized sources and what this means for routing. And another topic that comes up frequently is PCI impact, so we'll cover that too. To start, I want to be sure there's a common understanding of BIN as well as what is changing with the new standard. A bank identification number, or the BIN, is used across the industry to facilitate the identification of individual issuers. Our specific Visa definition is that this is a number assigned by ISO, or the International Organization for Standardization, to Visa, licensed by Visa to our clients, and that it's always the beginning of a count number, whether it's 6 or whether it's an 8. Visa does have an agreement with ISO for the 4 series of BINs. Even with the industry standard change, Visa will continue to exclusively use the 4s for our BINs. No change, no matter the length, to our issuing BINs. The account range is not changing with the new BIN standard. It remains as the first 9 digits of the PAN per Visa's definition. On the card shown here, we have the number 5 underlined to illustrate this. And as I said, Visa uses the 9-digit account range, and we use that for processing parameters and also to identify the product. And although it is a common misperception that the PAN length is going to change, it is staying the same. There's no impact no matter the BIN length. So the only change is the BIN may be the first 6 or the first 8 numbers of the primary count number, or the PAN. Okay. So why did the industry BIN standard change then, just to add 2 extra numbers? Well, quite simply, the payment industry is the victim of its own success. The unprecedented growth in payments increased the demand for bins to a point that the industry supply was declining at an increasingly rapid pace. ISO raised this as a topic in 2015 and assembled payment leaders from around the world to come to a solution. After much deliberation, they agreed to increase the length of the bin from 6 to 8 digits. They announced this change in 2017. Visa shortly followed to be sure that our clients had as much advance notice as possible and were aware the effective date of the change was April 22, 2022 for processors and the selling environment. We understand other schemes are working towards the same schedule. One question we get quite a bit is, when will cards based on 8-digit bins start to appear at merchant locations, both physical and online? Well, we don't control the other payment schemes, of course, but from a Visa standpoint, we will only be assigning 8-digit bins after April 2022. We will no longer assign 6-digit bins. Now, we have not announced a deadline for issuers to migrate their current 6 digits to 8 digits, but we are highly encouraging the issuers to make this change sooner rather than later. We have introduced new pricing and programs to encourage adoption, and primarily that will be in the latter part of 2022-2023. Want to be very clear that in 2019, we did begin to assign new 8-digit bins, and we have had clients who've converted their existing 6 digits. The reason you are not seeing any impact at this point is that we've not assigned any of those with the same 6-digit prefix to other clients. We are protecting the environment, as is ISO and others. Now, this next slide will answer the question of why this matters to you and to your business. It's a simple illustration, but to be sure we're all on the same page, quite simply, when an 8-digit bin is created, that one 6-digit bin explodes out to 100 8-digit bins. And then the same 6 digits will be at the beginning of 100 8-digit bins. As I said, right now we are protecting those 8-digit assignments. Sometime after April 22, 2022, we will lift those protections and 8-digit bins with the same 6-number prefix will be assigned as the start of 8-digit bins to different issuers from different countries for different products. Here's an example to illustrate how this will work. And in this example, we've got a Canadian issuer. They decide to convert their consumer credit bin to 8 digits. They'll take this one 6-digit bin, convert it to 100, 8 digits, and very likely they will not need all 100 of those 8-digit bins. In this example, they will only need 2, so they've released 98 8-digit bins to Visa. In time, we will license these 8-digit bins, all with the same 6-digit numbers at the start to, in this example, an issuer in Spain for a debit portfolio, a Russian issuer for prepaid, an issuer in the US for a prepaid flexible spending account card, FSA, and to a Japanese issuer with a corporate credit portfolio. I hope this illustration makes the implications more real so you can begin to think through, what if you were still only looking at the first 6 digits in the PAN as part of your operations? Now, with this next slide, I'd like to draw your attention to the use of account ranges, or once again, the first 9 digits of the PAN. As I briefly mentioned, we use the account range to identify products and for many other purposes. For many years now, we have encouraged issuers to consolidate multiple products on a single bin using the account ranges. Now, note we do maintain distinct bins by funding source, whether it's prepaid, debit, credit, and whether it's consumer or commercial, but more and more clients are maximizing the use of their bins by differentiating at the account range level. And in this example, we have a European issuer and their one bin. You can see the account ranges on their 6-digit bin includes important information about product type, countries, and currency. The country rights in Europe, of course, set up to the regulatory rights to passport there. As a business, setting up your systems to read just the first 6 or also the first 8 of the PAN will not be enough, as it's important to know this product type, currency, country, right? In a 6-digit bin, we have 1,000 ranges. For 8 digits, we'll have 10 different ranges and up to 10 million cards. We're going to continue to encourage use of all 10 account ranges. If you're only relying on the bin, you'll be missing important product and acceptance information that will impact fees, loyalty options, and much more. As more issuers adopt account ranges, this is going to become more important and also increasingly risky to rely on the bin for authorization, routing, transaction clearing, etc. Okay, so what if you are only looking at the 6 digits in the PAN as part of your operations? What are those risks? Question we get quite a bit. And based on our discussions with merchants and other partners, we do understand everyone's different. There's no one size fits all scenario. Risks will vary based on if, and if so, how you are using the 6-digit bin today. But a few of the consequences, if you're using the 6-digit bin and are not prepared, could be reduced efficiencies and possible interruptions to your processing capabilities. Other examples include unnecessary declines, rejections, or misrouting, gaps in fraud management defenses, inconsistencies in your reporting or other downstream systems, such as increased reconciliation costs. If you're not preparing now, your business will likely be disadvantaged. We don't know how long your assessment process or your change process will take, as well as those of your associated partners and vendors. But we have heard in many cases it requires extended timelines. I've been hearing between 12 and 18 months once you've lined up, of course, your development resources and completed your internal testing. So let's take a look at a scenario. It does happen now, but with the transition in the bin world to 8 digits, we expect it will occur more frequently. So in this situation, and once again, it's something we've seen in the 6-digit world, it stems from using bad data at point of sale to drive fraud decisions. We anticipate it'll occur more frequently as clients begin to convert their 6-digit bins. Remember in that first example how we showed, I think it was our Canadian issuer, returned 98 of those converted 8 digits. So in this case, it's an Eastern European issuer that converts a 6-digit credit bin, and a new issuer in the US receives one of those released 8-digit, which they then subsequently use for a credit program. Years could go on in between, but this is actually something we've seen. All goes well through launch for our US issuer, and then they get reports that a large merchant is declining transaction attempts from their cardholders. It all traces to the same merchant. The issuer, the acquirer, and Visa don't have visibility to what's going on, so they cannot explain. But eventually, it does become clear the merchant is using 6-digit bins to drive fraud decisioning and sourcing their data from a table they bought from an internet source. They had coded based on the once past Eastern European owner of that 6-digit bin, and they had coded that as do not accept, which then means 8-digit bins converted from that original 6-digit are getting blocked for no reason. As I said, this was one risk that was apparent to us based on actual experience, but we did want to understand other risks or impacts that you might encounter. So we, in 2020, engaged Deloitte Consulting to conduct interviews to better understand how our clients were using the issuing bin. As I said before, one of the unique aspects of this change is that Visa doesn't use the bin in transaction processing. We have limited visibility to your proprietary processing and downstream systems, so we knew we needed to go out there and get some information. We talked to payment leaders with business in over 90 countries to understand where you use the bins, what were your challenges in complying with the new standard, and your view overall of this change and how we could best support you. In partnership with Deloitte, we used a standard questionnaire to go through various capability areas in the payment process and listened. Our primary takeaway was that every client is different. We can't generalize by country, segment, size, etc. You all are quite unique in how you manage your businesses, the partners you use, and of course, how you manage those processes. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share some key findings from the Deloitte study to highlight the broad impacts this industry change may have. They're not meant to be comprehensive, but they are meant to stimulate your thought process and get you going for conducting your own impact assessment. For each category, we'll provide the potential risk and some data to help guide your review of potential consequences. So we're going to start with the risk to transaction processing. More than 2/3 of interview participants identified impacts to the merchant point of sale. The most typical examples for use of the 6-digit BIN at point of sale include PIN bypass, eligibility for magstripe transactions, and also merchant choice routing. Almost half of the interview participants identified point of sale terminals with hard-coded logic based on the 6-digit BIN. Now, it is important to say this was a very small subset of all terminals, but any disruption was considered significant. Since I expect we also have acquirers taking part in this session, I will add the subset of acquirers that use the first 6 digits of the PAN to route transactions. Now, they helped identify broad impacts across transaction processing. So examples included identifying product types, debit, credit, prepaid, and also service eligibility, such as installments or cashback. Other examples I'll call out include identifying international or on-us transactions. If the 6-digit BIN is used as part of the clearing and settlement or accounting and reconciliation processes, potential impacts include identification of the merchant discount rate or interchange postings and fee reconciliation. The impact assessment interviews were a wake-up call for any acquirers that were using third-party data tables that were limited to 6 digits. Okay. Another area is risk to compliance and fraud processes. Now, this is, of course, when the 6-digit BIN is used as a data element in the risk rules for authorization, such as a BIN block for sanction reasons. Overall, about 2/3 of participants interviewed identified impacts to fraud rules. And this includes reports and supporting systems because they base them on a 6-digit BIN. Examples include fraud monitoring activities and alerts. For certain acquirers, merchants define custom rules on acquirer platforms that include the BIN in combination with other elements. The participants that use the BIN as part of fraud rules identified varying levels of impact, and this ranged all the way from minor configuration updates to broader system changes. Remember, we said there's no one size fits all. Fraud reporting was also identified as an impact area. An example of a reporting impact would be segmentation of summary fraud statistics. And this is the reports that are based on the 6-digit issuing BIN. Now, when we look at the numbers, it was 25% of interview participants that confirmed they use the 6-digit BIN in reporting. And this might be higher because it was about 35% that said they weren't sure, but after the interviews, they were going to dig deeper. And now the risk to services and dispute management. About 60% of the interview participants performed searches by the 6-digit BIN. On the reporting side for acquirers, most interviewed do not use the 6-digit BIN in internal or third-party reporting. However, select acquirers do provide data and reporting to merchants that does include the BIN. Over half of the interview participants store the 6-digit BIN as a data element outside core processing systems. For example, acquirers and acquirer processors that were interviewed store the BIN within data tables in merchant preprocessors, terminal processing platforms, interactive voice response, better known as IVR applications, and also merchant servicing portals. Interview participants that do not store the BIN as a separate element do refer to it as part of the PAN when required, or they use other data elements, such as the BIN range tables, token, proxy, PAN. Knowing the increasing importance of downstream systems and services, very much want to be sure you interrogate this area closely and update it to accommodate the new BIN length and also, of course, the latest industry practices. Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, PCI DSS. This was a frequent topic during the impact assessment interviews, and we've heard quite a bit on this subsequently. Now, very importantly, the data at rest standard did not change, so you want to be sure you consider those implications in adopting the 8-digit industry standard. But let's start with data presented on reports and on screens. PCI did make changes after considering the move to the 8-digit standard. So for any issuers that document a legitimate business need, they are able to show any or all of the PAN. Data at rest. Now for this, PCI allows exposure of up to, but no more than, the first 6 digits and any other 4 digits in a 16-digit PAN. This means if you now show the first 6 and the last 4 digits, fine, you may continue to do so. If you see a need to expose the first 8 digits going forward, as well as the last 4, you're going to need to add one or more of the other acceptable methods for data protection. This would be encryption, hashing, tokenization, if you're currently not doing so. Now, we're not able to advise on your questions or approaches. We just don't have that much visibility in terms of your setup. But it is important for you to know when you're planning to accommodate that receipt requirements remain unchanged. Okay, and this should help your planning. We're reminding merchants they need to review any changes to how you plan to protect your data with a QSA or Qualified Security Assessor. Okay, so now we're going to share one final scenario, and this one illustrates impact to a quickly growing business segment. Now, in this situation, we have a frustrated cardholder from the US trying to use their new credit card for a bill pay situation, and then a subscription to a streaming channel. This is an extremely large and growing business segment. So why is this person continuing to get declined? They are in good standing, but actually what's happening is the US issuer is using a new 8-digit BIN assignment that was released once again after a Canadian issuer converted one of their 6-digit gift card, a non-reloadable prepaid BIN, to 8 digits and returned what they didn't need. So this is a situation of the data file having incorrect, outdated product type listed. To resolve this, the issuer require a Visa can't explain what's happening. The cardholder's frustrated. The merchants are losing business and taking time to figure out what's going on, of course. So we shared this example once again to reinforce the importance of planning ahead. Not changing may have impacts to your efficiencies as well as your revenues. Once you complete your planning and do understand the impacts to your business, it's very doubtful your changes, as well as those of your partners, middleware, hardware, other equipment vendors, etc., can happen in a matter of days, weeks, or sometimes even months. And that underscores the conclusion from the Deloitte study, which Visa wholeheartedly embraces. Prompt action is required. The changes to your operations may require extended deadlines and must be coordinated with your partners. If you haven't launched your 8-digit planning with a thorough assessment, the time is now. And if you have started, I recommend taking an objective look. Is your assessment broad enough? Does it include your entire organization and your partners? Have you reached out to all of your vendors that support you and other clients that you serve? Okay. And if nothing else, please use only authorized tables from your acquirer to support your operations. Reach out to your acquirers regarding authorized tables and do not buy BIN tables off the internet. We know that this data is not current based on marketplace issues we have dealt with in a strictly 6-digit world. This will become much more problematic, especially as issuers begin to convert in more of a critical mass to the new 8-digit standard. And I want to underscore that the Visa tables are not based on the BIN. We provide account range, issuer ID, acquire ID, and other numerics to provide you with the routing, clearance, and other acceptance information that's needed for seamless operations. Quite simply, if you need to know about the products, currencies, or countries of issuance, no longer possible to rely upon the issuing BIN, whether it's 6 or 8 digits. So what should you be doing now? And we've also been recently asked, is it too late if you've not started yet? No, it's not too late, but this does need to be a priority for your organization. So one, the single most important thing you can do right now is conduct an impact assessment. Only you will be able to determine, working with a cross-functional group, what the impacts are for your organization. Secondly, create your plan. And as I said, please work across business lines, include your acquirer, processors, partners who support your business. It's not one size fits all. Visa and the other payment schemes cannot provide you with this plan. And then finally, implement and also test with all your relevant stakeholders, such as, once again, your acquirer, processor partners. We have quite a few resources available to help get you started. And here's a quick snapshot of our resources. We had some available when you first signed in, and we'll end with a few of them on screen as well for you to pick up. They are available on visa.com for merchants, and Visa Online includes these and even more for acquirers and processors, issuers. Please take the time to review them to help you understand the potential impacts. I don't want to go through each one, but I will call out the questionnaire Deloitte used for their interviews is available. This will help you kickstart your own impact assessment. We've also created a merchant action sheet that gives you the key activities to undertake at the beginning. It can seem a bit overwhelming, so one step at a time. And as I said, there's a number of other resources. So let me do a quick recap now, and we'll open it up to questions. Coming back to our highlights, and to set the stage for questions. The primary account number, not changing. The length is staying the same, and neither is the account range, which is the foundation for our product ID, an increasing number of product and processing parameters. 8-digit BINs are in the market now, and after April 2022, ISO and the payment schemes will stop protecting those assignments, which is why we want to be sure the selling environment's ready. If you haven't done so already, conduct your impact assessment to understand if and where you're using the 6-digit BIN for any of your operations or processes. We'll continue to reinforce the need to be sure any data you're using is from your acquirers, based on authorized sources. Visa processing and routing is not based on the BIN. If you need to make changes, be sure you're basing those on the account range, the card prefix, and other acceptance information. Be aware of what's changed for PCI and what is not. You may need to involve your QSA to validate assumptions in your plan. Remember, the receipt requirements are not changing. Okay, so for now, let's get to your questions. Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you to start our panel.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Erin, and I am part of the North America Numerics leadership team and will be coordinating the Q&A section. Let's get to the questions we have received from our partners. The first one is, what could my impacts be if I'm not ready prior to April of 2022? I'll go ahead and take this one. And actually, as the industry change impacts every single player in the ecosystem differently, you're the only one who can answer that question. For those of you following the best practices and looking at the account range, which as we discussed is the first 9 digits, your impacts may be minor. However, if you read the first 6 digits of the card number to inform your business decisions and processes, and we understand that many of you do today, as of April of 2022, you may face negative consequences, which could include declined transactions at the POS that should be valid, approving risky transactions without being aware of, or not correctly identifying your best customers and applying rewards appropriately. The failure points and severity will vary depending on your specific usage of the issuing BIN, your setup of the supporting technology, dependencies across your service providers, and downstream process flows and your associated outputs. The impact guide that was just discussed will be available for you on visa.com and can help you conduct a thorough review to help answer this question for your business. The second question I'll go ahead and take as well, and that is, what will happen if acquirers and processors are not ready by April of 2022? So acquirers and processors that are not able to handle 8-digit issuing BINs may be unable to support clients. The change to the BIN standard was set by ISO in 2017. It is an industry-wide global change supported by ISO stakeholders. And as we talked about, risks will occur over time. However, since changes are required by a merchant, acquirer, or service provider may take an extended period of time to implement and test, it's not too early to begin now to be ready before cards based on an 8-digit issuing BIN begin to be used at the point of sale. All right, question number 3 will be for Berenice. Where should I be getting my BIN tables from to ensure they are accurate?
So we really recommend that you work with your acquirer, because the acquirers receive our routing tables weekly. So they will have the latest information and they should be able to provide that to you.
Thank you. The next question is for Deb, and that's, what should I do if I hard code BINs at my POS?
Hey, everybody. My first piece of advice would be to stop doing that. Of course, I say this is not knowing your circumstances. However, even though the adoption of the 8-digit BINs, acquirers or merchants using the 6-digit BIN for either authorization, routing, or transaction clearing may not capture the correct funding source. For example, a funding source is debit, credit, or prepaid, may also not capture country or product ID. Since 2015, Visa has made use of the account ranges, the first 9 digits of the PAN, to define the processing parameters. Routing is rarely defined by the first 6 digits of the PAN. As of the first half of 2020, almost 90% of Visa products have routing defined by more than 6 digits of the PAN. So if it is essential to look at the first 9 digits, or whatever Visa calls the account range level. The most high-profile example of the use of the 9-digit account range is the Visa Token Service. For your situation, we recommend you start your internal analysis and use this as your blueprint to identify your changes in schedule. As we have said, every setup is unique, so you will need to work with your internal teams and your service providers to determine specific next steps. We also recommend evaluation of your BIN sources to ensure you are consistently using current information.
Thanks, Deb. This next one is for you as well, and that is Visa requiring testing at the point of sale?
From a Visa perspective, testing is optional for 8-digit issuing BINs, as there's no message changes to authorizations, clearing, or settlement. We do, however, highly recommend each merchant conduct internal testing to be sure all operate seamlessly. Once again, the impact assessment will help identify your needs. Merchants need to work with their acquirers, likewise acquirers with their merchants and any other partners who support their transaction processing, routing, and downstream activities. Clients are highly encouraged to test their own downstream applications and proprietary systems to ensure their transaction processing from start to finish continues to run as expected. Merchants should work with their acquirers to assess Visa's support. Acquirers can find the client testing specific to 8 digits, which is posted on the Numerics Initiative page on VOL.
Thanks, Deb. Karen, this next question is for you, and that is, what is the impact to PCI compliance? Has PCI provided clarification on requirements to store data at rest?
Yeah, we touched on this in the presentation, but I will go ahead and repeat it. Once again, PCI is aware the standard has changed because they know that they did change their requirement for data presented on reports and screens. They've looked at it in terms of data at rest, but they continue to support the approach of allowing exposure to of no more than the first 6 digits and any other 4 digits in a 16-digit PAN in the data at rest situation. So endpoints may continue to show the first 6 and the last 4, but if you want to make a change for that and show the first 8, last 4, you're going to need to add another method of data protection. And likely you're going to need to call on your qualified security assessor. Now, I'll also let you know that because we've gotten so many questions on this, we have brought it to the PCI group, and they're aware, they're discussing this, and they're bringing more information to the forefront to support your planning. I can't comment, do they intend to change it? I do not believe that they plan to, but that's not for me to say. However, they have said they want to very much use this as an opportunity to encourage best practices with data management. And we know that fraud continues to be a very top of mind topic across the payment industry. So hopefully that helps. PCI, they have a site online. I believe in our deck we have a link to their page where they provide their guidance as well. So please check that out and work with them as you're making your changes if you need to. Thanks.
All right. The next question is, what are the impacts to DCC? Bernice, are you able to take this one?
Yeah, there are no impacts to DCC because DCC is actually at the account range level. And the file that we provide to our merchants, like I mentioned, it includes all the currencies at the account range. So that's not changing.
Great, thank you. Next question is, what are the impacts to token? Deb?
Visa designed its token solution anticipating the change of the bin length. Token is not impacted by any bin length change.
And this is Karen.
This next one's for you.
Okay, can I just add one thing? I saw that in our questions, we got a question about how to handle MasterCard's approach to tokens. And of course, we can just speak to Visas. And as Deb said, in fact, Deb was part of the team that designed the token solution. We knew this 8-digit bin change was happening, which is why built it on account ranges. So thank you, Deb. Back to you, Erin.
Fabulous. All right, Deb, this next one's for you as well. Will bins for fleet cards continue to come from a specific pool of numerics, even with 8-digit?
The simple answer for that is yes. Visa is going to continue to protect these assignments. If you have questions about other bin pools, please feel free to add them to the chat now.
Okay, fantastic. And there was a follow-up question regarding whether fleet cards would continue to be issued on a 6-digit bin range or whether they would also be issued in the future at an 8-digit bin range as well.
All Visa issuance of bins after April 2022 will be at the 8-digit level. This does include the specialized bin pools such as fleet.
Thank you. All right. The next question, Bernice, is will there be more ranges within the bin file as a result of this change?
Yes, the file sizes will increase. And that is part of the preparation. Our merchants have to be ready for more capacity. And even though our routing tables today are actually at the account range, we are anticipating more account ranges as we start issuing at the 8-digit level.
Thank you. Next question is, should merchants perform any confidence testing with acquiring partners? As Deb mentioned earlier, clients are highly encouraged to test downstream applications and their systems with partners, so that is recommended. All right. Next question is for Karen. While PCI may state we're allowed to use up to 10 digits, our PCI certified P2PE solution is required to only expose us to the first 6 and last 4. Will the council be addressing their P2PE solution to address this?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and add that to the considerations they should discuss. I certainly anticipate they will, since it is part of their standard now. But we'll go ahead and reinforce that as well for you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So, Bernice, this question is for you. Will banks and credit unions need to make adjustments to their cash advance terminals prior to the change?
Well, it depends if those terminals are reading at the 6-digit level. They have to change. And my understanding of the question, what some of the credit unions have reached out to us, is that they use preferential or like different screens for their own cardholders. We recommend that those screens don't be coded at the 6-digit level, right? Like they have to be at account range so they can identify their own cardholders when they come to their ATMs. And then for foreign customers, meaning like customers who don't bank with them, they do need to use the routing tables provided by Visa.
Thank you. This question is for Karen, and so it's essentially, is this the main takeaway, to begin making routing decisions based on account ranges, not BIN?
Was the question, is a takeaway from this to use account ranges rather than BIN for their decisions?
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. We would be very, very pleased if that's one of the key messages that people take away today. And as Bernice has been saying too, and Bernice, I invite you to, add anything else here. The Visa tables provides the information that you need, the account range level, the acquiring ID, the issuer ID. So yes, absolutely. That's what we use in our financial messages, and that's certainly what we hope that you're using going forward.
Thank you. So Karen, this is for you as well. Is there any non-compliant fee related to the 8-digit BIN?
At this point, we have revised Visa rules to reflect the change in the standard. We do not anticipate that we will be, because we don't have a deadline now for converting the 6 to 8, we are using other incentives to get people to make that change. Now, we certainly expect, and we've talked about this before, the implications of not being ready for the change are going to be felt more at the partner level, whether it's the merchant or the acquirer, et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely, it's in your best interest to make this change, I think, more than any Visa rule or non-compliance situation could make happen. I would also say, because I do see that we've got a lot of issuers, acquirers on the call, that we've linked this to the April business enhancements release for April 2022, less than a year away now. But this is very different than a typical BRR, because the changes in VisaNet to accommodate the 8 digits were completed in 2019. We can't do a waiver, a functional command, et cetera, to protect you for this. And even if there was something that we could do, we can't control what MasterCard, CUP, Discover, et cetera, are doing. So once again, it's in your best interest to be prepared for your operations to continue as seamlessly and smoothly as they are now.
Thank you. This next question is for Deb. Can a BIN be recycled by a different issuer? So a previously used 6-digit BIN is currently used today by issuer A, but after a certain date, it is reassigned to issuer B. If yes, is this date change made available to merchants?
the simple answer on that one is yes, it can be assigned to someone else once an 8-digit has been returned. Visa will follow the standard practices for bin return. Any 8-digit bins that are returned will be out of circulation for at least 12 months before they would be reintroduced. So there would be time for them to no longer be on the account range tables that are distributed from a Visa perspective. The only notification would be that the account ranges would be added to one of the files that Visa distributes. There would be no additional notification that that 8-digit bin had been assigned out to a new client.
Thank you. All right, this next question is for Berenice. Does VBAS provide account ranges?
Yes, VBAS is based on the account range definition table, and so it is provided at account range level.
Thank you. So we're getting several questions on testing and test cards and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and open it back up to Karen to talk a little bit more about testing.
Sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button there. Okay, very good. As we said, we know that some schemes are requiring testing. Visa is not. As we said, the issuing bin length does not make a difference in VisaNet processing, right? So there's nothing that we can test. However, we do know that as we're out there pushing, doing internal testing, that many of our acquirers will need the support of our global testing organization. And they are set up, acquirers can go through their usual channels to request support for testing. If there's a physical plastic, which sometimes is a question that we're getting as well, I can handle that. So we can provide physical plastics to assist acquirers in device testing, even though device testing is not required. But if they do want to test their terminal, ATM, etc., we have the PANs based on 8-digit bins listed in our technical letter guide. And they're also in the numeric testing guide, which is available, as we've said a few times, on Visa Online. Now, there's also the VMCP toolkit that clients can purchase. This toolkit is available from the Google Play Store, and they can, once they download that and purchase it, they can purchase the set of utility cards by emailing, and this would be in the toolkit, but by emailing visa.fulfillment@expressdocs.com. So likely best to sign up for VMCP. Acquirers, you can get that information and go to that email if that is something that would be helpful to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Karen, while you're up, we'll just keep you on for this next question, and that is, can the changes be made in our system gradually over a period of time prior to April of 2022, or does it have to be on a certain date?
I'm not sure if that perspective came from issuer, acquirer, merchant, but since it did include before April 2022, yes, Visa and other schemes will continue to protect. So in any 8-digit bin that comes through your systems up until that time will be protected, so you can consider it as a 6-digit bin. So yes, you can make your changes incrementally. Issuers, as we said, we do not have a deadline for them to convert their 6-digit bins to 8 digits. What we are seeing is many issuers are going in and taking a portion of their cards and making the change, whether it's one program, one geography, etc., because that's how they're doing some testing for this. Another way this program is different, it's not like Y2K, where on January 2nd, you're going to know are things working or not. It is going to be a gradual change as more and more 8-digit credentials come up over the course of the next several years, actually. But April 2022 is definitely when both Visa and other players in the industry have announced effective date for the processors and selling environments. So whatever you need to do to get to that place, and incrementally sounds like a perhaps a very wise choice. That certainly sounds reasonable.
Thank you. We are getting several questions from an issuing perspective, and I apologize we're running out of time. I will just, for those questions, there are several resources available out on Visa Online from the issuer perspective if that material will be helpful to you, and you are also welcome to reach out to your Visa representative with additional numerics questions. In addition, there have been some questions on the availability of this material. And as a reminder, it will be available, this presentation will be available for download once the presentation concludes. With that, we'll go ahead and start wrapping it back up, and I'll turn it back over to Marcus.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for moving things along so we could get through as many as possible. So due to time, we're going to have to close now. I'm going to actually pass it to Karen. Karen, do you have any final words for the audience here?
Still, okay, good. I wanted to check to be sure I wasn't on mute. I am just going to repeat what folks have heard me say multiple times during this past hour. Impacts are going to vary significantly for every client, and each organization will need to conduct their own impact assessment in order to understand what they need to change. It's very important that merchants and all of our other partners get started now, or if you've started, please take another look to be sure that you're comprehensive enough. We get a bit nervous when folks look around and go, oh yeah, I'm ready. The more that they think about it, and that's one of the great things about this impact assessment, it gives some ideas of where else to look, what else to consider. The questionnaires are a great starting point. Likely you'll be amending them, but that's why we made them, just as a starting point. They'll help you understand if you're using the 6-digit BIN, and if so, where, and it'll provide additional input to your plans. Also, please know on visa.com as well as on Visa Online, we have an FAQ document. We'll look at all the questions we got today, and if we need to add anything because we didn't get to your question or there was a new question that we hadn't considered before, we will add that. So we're continually refreshing these resources. We also do plan to have other webinars, so please keep alert to those invites, those announcements, because we learned so much from the questions that you have, and hopefully you found this worthwhile as well. So Marcus, back to you.
Okay, thank you. So remember, everyone, that if we did not get to your questions, we are always refreshing the FAQs on the Numerics site. You can visit Numerics initiative page on visa.com to find the latest information. If you included your email in your response, we will get back to you in the event that we didn't get to your question. So lastly, I just want to thank the entire panel once again. You are all the best. Thanks so much for all your participation here and your insights throughout the Q&A. To the participants, please remember to complete the survey when you exit. You'll be able to, hopefully the pop-up in the browser will just pop up for you once you exit. And we'll put up the slides that we used today for you to download before you exit as well. On behalf of all of us at Visa, thank you for your time today, and good day, everyone. Thank you.